The alarm screamed through the medical station at 3 in the morning. Dr. Park jumped from his bed and ran toward the emergency bay. His hands were still shaking from sleep, but his mind was already sharp. He had been working at this remote station for 2 years now, and emergencies always came at the worst times. The station hung in empty space, far from any major planet. It was a small place with only 12 staff members. Most days were quiet. Most days were boring, but not tonight. Burst through the doors and stopped. A massive ship filled the view screen, larger than anything he had seen before. It was not human. The design was strange, with curves and angles that made no sense to human engineering. Smoke poured from its damaged hull. "They're requesting emergency medical assistance," his assistant Myra shouted over the noise. "Someone is dying on that ship." "What species?" asked, pulling on his surgical gloves. Myra said, and her face went pale. "They're sending someone down now." Felt his stomach drop. They were one of the oldest and most powerful races in the galaxy. They rarely spoke to humans. Most thought humans were too young, too primitive to matter, and now one of them needed his help. The airlock opened with a hiss. 6 tall figures in silver armor marched through, carrying a stretcher between them. The person on the stretcher was covered in purple blood. Could see her face, delicate and pale, with skin that shimmered like pearl. She was barely breathing. "You will save her," the largest soldier said. His voice was deep and cold. "She is Princess Ara, daughter of King. If she dies, you die." Felt fear grip his chest, but he pushed it away. Fear had no place in an operating room. "Put her on the table," he said, pointing. "Now." The soldiers hesitated. They looked at each other, uncertain. The leader, who wore a different colored helmet, finally nodded. "I am captain. I will remain with her." "No," said firmly. "No one stays in my operating room except my staff. You will wait outside." Captain's hand moved to his weapon. For a long moment nobody moved. Then the captain stepped back. "You have one chance, human. Do not waste it." The soldiers left and was alone with Myra and the dying princess. He looked down at her and felt panic trying to break through his calm. He had never treated her before. Nobody on the station had. Human doctors studied alien biology in school, but studying and doing were completely different things. "Scan her," ordered. "I need to see what we're working with." The medical scanner hummed to life. Images appeared on the screen showing the princess's internal structure. It was all wrong. Her organs were in different places. Her blood moved through 3 hearts instead of 1. Her bones were thinner but somehow stronger. Everything about her was alien. "Multiple fractures," Myra said, reading the data. "Internal bleeding from. I don't even know what that organ is. Energy burns across her torso. I don't know if we can do this." "We have to try," said. He studied the scans, his mind racing. The bleeding was the biggest problem. If he could not stop it, she would die in minutes. But where was the blood coming from? The organ that was damaged did not match anything in his medical books. He made a decision. "It looks similar to a liver. We treat it like a liver until we learn otherwise." "That's insane," Myra whispered. "Do you have a better idea?" asked. She did not answer. Began to work. His hands moved with practiced skill, cutting carefully through tissue that felt different from human flesh. The princess's blood was thicker, almost glowing under the lights. Every few minutes her body would twitch and the monitors would scream warnings. Each time had to stop and adjust. Hours passed. His back ached. His eyes burned. Sweat dripped down his face, but he could not stop to wipe it away. Myra handed him tools without being asked. She had worked with him long enough to know what he needed before he said it. "The bleeding is slowing," Myra said, and heard hope in her voice. "Not enough," replied. He could see the problem now. The damaged organ had torn in 3 places. He had sealed 2 of them, but the third was hidden behind a cluster of blood vessels. If he cut through them, she might bleed out. If he did not reach the tear, she would die anyway. He took a deep breath and made another cut. Purple blood sprayed across his gown. Myra gasped. Hands moved faster, sealing vessels, pushing tissue aside, reaching for that final tear. His fingers found it. The damage was worse than he thought. The entire section would need to be removed. "Can survive with partial organ removal?" Myra asked. "I don't know," admitted, "but she definitely can't survive with it torn open." He worked carefully, removing the damaged section and sealing what remained. The princess's vital signs were dropping. Her 3 hearts were beating out of rhythm. Grabbed a stimulant from the medical cabinet. He had no idea if it would work on biology, but doing nothing would certainly fail. He injected it directly into her primary heart. For 3 terrible seconds, nothing happened. Then her heart synced. The monitors stabilized. Her breathing deepened. "It's working," Myra breathed. "It's actually working." But was not finished. He could see burns across her chest, caused by some kind of energy weapon. The burns had damaged her skin in ways that would not heal properly. Scar tissue would form, might even cause complications later. He spent another hour carefully treating each burn, using techniques he had developed for human patients, and hoping they would work. Finally, as the station's artificial dawn began to brighten the windows, stepped back. The princess was stable. Her breathing was steady. Her 3 hearts beat in perfect rhythm. She would live. Pulled off his bloody gloves and walked toward the door. His legs almost gave out. He caught himself on the wall and took a moment to breathe. 14 hours. He had been operating for 14 hours straight. Captain stood outside, exactly where had left him. The other soldiers were there too, standing like statues. They all turned to look at as he emerged. "Well," Captain demanded. "She will live," said simply. The captain's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Relief maybe, or respect. "You are certain?" "Yes, she needs rest and time to heal, but the worst is over. She's stable." Captain was silent for a long moment. Then he did something did not expect. The tall alien warrior placed his fist over his heart and bowed his head. It was a small gesture, but from it meant everything. "The king will hear of this," Captain said quietly. 3 days later, Princess Ara was strong enough to be moved. They prepared to leave. Checked her one final time, making sure all her readings were normal. She was awake now, though still weak. "Thank you," she whispered in perfect English. Her voice was musical, strange. "You saved my life." "That's my job," replied with a small smile. "Not just your job," she said. "You took a risk. You could have refused, most would have." Before could respond, Captain entered. "We must depart. The king is waiting." Princess Ara looked at one more time, and he saw something in her eyes. Gratitude, yes, but also something else. A promise, perhaps. Then they were gone, and the medical station was quiet again. Returned to his quarters and collapsed on his bed. He thought the matter was finished. He thought he would never see thee again. He was wrong. 3 months passed like a quiet dream. Returned to his normal routine at the medical station. He treated the usual cases: broken bones from dock workers, space sickness from new travelers, infections from those who ignored safety protocols. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. He tried not to think about the princess or He tried to pretend that night had been just another shift. But the galaxy had not forgotten. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning. Was drinking coffee in the station's small cafeteria when Commander Myra rushed in, her face white as paper. She said, and her voice shook, "There's a battle cruiser in our space. They're here for you." The coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. "What?" "They sent an official summons. You're being called to They want you there within the week." Felt his heart hammer against his ribs. Did they say why? "No, just that your presence is required by order of King himself." Within 2 hours, the station was in chaos. The Human Federation sent 3 diplomats through emergency transport. They crowded into small quarters, all talking at once, all looking worried. The lead diplomat was a woman named Ambassador. She was older, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She sat across from and studied him like he was a puzzle she needed to solve. "Dr. Park," she said calmly, "we need to understand the situation. The do not summon humans to there. In fact, most humans have never been allowed to visit. This is unprecedented." "I just did my job," said. "I saved the princess's life, that's all." "That's not all," another diplomat interrupted. He was young and nervous. "They have strict honor codes. Life debts are sacred to them, but we don't know if they see this as a debt they owe you or an insult they need to address." "An insult?" asked. Ambassador nodded slowly. "Some might be angry that a human touched their princess, that a primitive species saved her when their own medicine could not. Pride is important to them. So they might punish me for saving her life." Could not believe what he was hearing. "We don't know," admitted. "That's the problem. Culture is complex. We've been trying to understand them for 50 years and we still barely scratch the surface. But I'll teach you what I can before you go." "Before I go, I don't have a choice." "No," said simply. "Refusing a royal summons would be an act of war. You're going." The next 5 days were a blur. Ambassador taught about customs, how to bow, how to speak, which colors to avoid wearing because they meant dishonor, which phrases would cause offense. There was so much to remember and felt his head spinning with information. "Don't look directly at the king unless he speaks to you first," said. "Don't turn your back on any royal family member. Don't refuse food if offered, but don't finish everything on your plate either. That suggests they didn't provide enough." "This is impossible," muttered. "You'll manage," said, but she did not sound confident. On the 6th day, boarded a small human transport that would take him to the battle cruiser waiting at the edge of the system. He carried one bag with his few possessions, and a head full of rules he was terrified of forgetting. The ship was enormous. It made the human transport look like a toy. When stepped aboard, he found himself in a corridor made of materials he had never seen before. The walls seemed to glow from within. The air smelled like copper and something else, something sweet and strange. 2 guards escorted him to his quarters. They did not speak. They just walked ahead, their silver armor catching the light, their weapons visible at their sides. The quarters they gave him were larger than his entire living space on the medical station. The bed was huge, covered in fabric that felt like water. A window showed the stars rushing past as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel. Sat on the bed and tried to calm his racing thoughts. He was traveling to a world no human had ever seen. He was about to meet the most powerful ruler in this sector of space, and he had no idea if he would return home alive. 3 days into the journey, someone knocked on his door, opened it, and found himself staring at Princess Aura. She looked completely different from the dying girl on his operating table. Her skin glowed with health. Her eyes were bright. She wore robes of deep blue that seemed to shift colors as she moved, but her smile was the same, gentle and genuine. "Dr. Park," she said, "may I come in?" "Of course, Your Highness," said, remembering to bow the way he had taught him. Aura laughed softly. "Please just call me Aura. You saved my life. Formality seems silly between us." She entered and sat on one of the chairs, remained standing, unsure of the protocol. "Sit," Aura said. "I'm not here as a princess. I'm here as someone who owes you everything." Sat carefully. "I'm glad you recovered fully. You look well." "Thanks to you," Aura said. She leaned forward, her expression growing serious. "I need to tell you something. My father has been trying to decide how to honor the life debt for 3 months. The Royal Council has been fighting about it every single day." "Why is it such a problem?" asked. "Because you're human," Aura said bluntly. "Many on the council believe humans are beneath us. They think my father should give you money or a title and send you away. But my father disagrees. He believes the debt is greater than that." "What does he want to do?" Ara smiled, but there was worry in her eyes. I'm not supposed to tell you, but I wanted you to be prepared. What my father is planning will shock everyone. It might even anger some very powerful people. Should I be scared? Asked. Honestly, maybe, but you should also be proud. My father is a good king, and he understands something that many of our people have forgotten. Worth is not determined by age or species. It's determined by actions. Before could ask more, Ara stood. I should go before someone notices I'm here, but thank you again. Not just for my life, but for treating me like a person, not just a problem to solve. She left as quietly as she came, and was alone again with his thoughts. The rest of the journey passed slowly. Spent his time looking out the window at strange stars and trying not to panic. He practiced the phrases had taught him. He reviewed everything he knew about culture. He prepared himself for anything. But when the ship finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel and saw through the window, all his preparation vanished from his mind. The planet was beautiful beyond words. 3 moons hung in a purple sky. Cities of crystal and metal covered the surface, catching the light of their sun and throwing it back in a million colors. Ships moved through the atmosphere like schools of fish, graceful and synchronized. We're landing at the Imperial Palace. One of his guards finally spoke. The king is waiting. Felt his mouth go dry. This was it. This was the moment that would decide everything. The ship descended through clouds that seemed to glow. The Imperial Palace appeared below them, and his breath caught. It was not a building. It was a work of art. Towers rose into the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float without support. Gardens surrounded it, filled with plants that moved and swayed even though there was no wind. The ship landed on a platform near the top of the main tower. When the doors opened, stepped out into warm air that smelled like flowers and electricity. Captain was waiting for him, along with 20 other guards in ceremonial armor. Behind them stood hundreds of nobles, all dressed in elaborate robes, all staring at. Dr. Park, Captain said formally. Welcome to, King requests your presence in the throne room immediately. Followed the captain through the palace. Every hallway was more impressive than the last. They passed rooms filled with treasures, libraries that seemed to stretch forever, windows that looked out on impossible views. Finally, they reached 2 massive doors made of something that looked like gold but moved like liquid. The doors opened and walked into the throne room. It was the size of a stadium. Thousands have filled the space, all turned to watch him. And at the far end, sitting on a throne that seemed carved from starlight itself, was King. The throne room fell silent as walked forward. Every step echoed on the polished floor. Every eye watched him. He felt small and insignificant, a single human among thousands of beings who had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. King was even more impressive than his palace. He was tall, even for a with skin that shimmered like moonlight. His eyes were ancient and sharp. His robes were simple compared to the nobles around him, but somehow that made him seem more powerful, not less. He wore a crown that seemed to be made of frozen light. Captain stopped 20 feet from the throne and bowed deeply. The movement, trying to remember everything Ambassador had taught him. Dr. Park, King's voice filled the massive room without seeming loud. You may approach. Walked forward until he stood at the base of the throne. His heart hammered so hard he thought everyone could hear it. You saved my daughter's life, the king said. It was not a question. Yes, your majesty, replied, keeping his eyes down as had instructed. Look at me. Raised his eyes. King studied him for a long moment. 3 months ago, my daughter was dying. Our best doctors said nothing could be done. Our technology, refined over 10,000 years, had no answer. Yet you, a human working in a small station with primitive equipment, succeeded where we failed. How? Thought carefully before answering. I didn't have better technology or more knowledge. I just had a different perspective. Sometimes being an outsider means seeing solutions others miss. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some nobles looked angry, others looked thoughtful. A different perspective, King repeated. Yes, that is exactly right. He stood, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. I have called you here to honor a life debt. In our culture, such debts are sacred, but many of my advisors disagree on how to honor it. An older stepped forward from the crowd. He wore robes of deep red and his face was stern. Your Majesty, I must speak. You may speak, High Counselor. The counselor turned to address the crowd, though his words were clearly meant for the king. This human performed a service, yes, we are grateful, but to elevate him beyond his station would be inappropriate. A generous payment, perhaps a minor title on some outer colony, that would be sufficient. Other voices rose in agreement, felt his stomach sink. He had expected this, but hearing it still hurt. Sufficient, King said slowly. He walked down from his throne until he stood beside. Counselor, tell me, how much money equals my daughter's life? What minor title can repay the debt of her breathing, laughing, living? The counselor opened his mouth, then closed it. I thought not, the king said. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. For 10,000 years we have ruled this sector of space. We have been proud of our age, our wisdom, our power, but pride has made us blind. We have grown stagnant while calling it stability. We have confused age with wisdom. King placed his hand on shoulder. The touch was gentle, but the weight of it was enormous. This human doctor showed us something we had forgotten. Innovation matters more than tradition. Compassion matters more than pride. Results matter more than appearance. Dr. Park, you saved not just my daughter. You saved my faith that the galaxy still has room for growth. The king turned to face his court. Therefore, I announce my decision. Dr. Park will be granted a seat on the High Council. The throne room exploded. Nobles shouted in shock and anger. Some cheered. Most just stared in disbelief. Felt like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. A seat on the High Council, that was impossible. That was insane. Father, no, a young male pushed through the crowd. He looked similar to Princess Ara, but his expression was hard. This must be Prince realized, the king's son. This is madness, Prince said. The High Council has existed for 5,000 years. Every member has been, every single one. And you want to give a seat to a human, someone whose species has barely left their home system. I do, King said calmly. The council will never accept it, Prince argued. Half of them will resign. Our allies will question your judgment. Our enemies will see it as weakness. Perhaps, the king acknowledged, or perhaps they will see it as strength, the strength to change, the strength to honor truth over tradition. Princess Ara stepped forward from where she had been standing among the nobles. She walked until she stood beside, facing the crowd. I died on that operating table, she said, and her voice was clear and strong. For 3 minutes my heart stopped. Dr. Park brought me back. He worked for 14 hours straight. His hands were shaking from exhaustion, but he did not stop. He did not give up. Even when he did not know if his methods would work, he tried. That is not primitive. That is not inferior. That is courage. She turned to look at the crowd. I watched him through my recovery. I read his medical reports. Do you know what I learned? Human doctors are trained differently than ours. They are taught to improvise, to adapt, to try new approaches when old ones fail. We have forgotten how to do that. We follow the old ways because they are comfortable, not because they are best. She's right, another voice called out, turned and saw an elderly pushing forward through the crowd. He was thin and bent with age, but his eyes were bright. I am elder and I have studied the younger species for 300 years. The humans are different. They fail constantly, but they learn from every failure. They try impossible things and sometimes succeed. We could benefit from that perspective. High Counselor's face was red with anger. This is a mockery of our traditions. No, King said firmly. This is honoring the highest tradition of all, the tradition of recognizing worth wherever it appears, the tradition of growth over stagnation. Dr. Park will take his seat on the High Council, and he will have all the rights and responsibilities that come with it. The king gestured, and servants came forward carrying a small box. King opened it and removed a device that looked like a silver circlet. This is a neural interface. It will allow you to access our databases, communicate in our language, and participate in council meetings. It will also let you call for help if needed. Stared at the device. Your Majesty, I don't know if I'm worthy of this honor. Neither do I, King said honestly. But you saved my daughter when others said it was impossible. You broke the rules and succeeded. That is exactly what the council needs. He held out the device. Will you accept? Thought about refusing. He thought about asking for the simple payment and going home. But then he thought about Princess Ara's words, about human medicine and technology combining, about what they could accomplish together. He took the neural interface. The king placed it on its head. For a moment nothing happened. Then information flooded its mind. Languages, history, star maps, technology. It was overwhelming, too much all at once. He gasped and nearly fell, but Captain caught him. It will take time to adjust, King said gently. You will be given quarters in the palace, a staff, access to anything you need, and you will attend your first council meeting in 1 week. Nodded, still trying to process everything the neural interface was showing him. The king turned back to address the court. This is my decision, and it is final. Anyone who wishes to challenge it may face me in the traditional way. No one spoke. Challenging a king's decision meant a duel, and everyone knew King was still a formidable warrior despite his age. Then it is settled, King said. He looked at one more time. Welcome to the High Council, Dr. Park. I hope you survive what comes next. The ceremony ended, and servants led away. He was given a palace that would have housed 50 people on the medical station. His staff of 10 looked at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. None of them spoke as they showed him to his rooms. That night, lying in a bed too large and too soft, stared at the ceiling and wondered what he had gotten himself into. Through the neural interface, he could feel the thoughts of the palace. Anger, resentment, curiosity, hope, all directed at him. He was the first human to hold real power in space, the first outsider to join their highest council, and half the empire wanted him dead. But somewhere in the palace, Princess Ara was alive and healthy. She was laughing with her friends, planning her future, living a life that should have ended 3 months ago. That decided made everything worth it. Tomorrow he would start learning how to be a counselor. He would start earning the respect of those who hated him. He would start proving that King's faith was not misplaced. Tomorrow the real work would begin. 6 months passed, and learned what it meant to be an outsider in a room full of power. The High Council met every 3 days in a chamber carved from a single massive crystal. 15 sat in a circle and made 16. His seat was still shining and unmarked by time. Every other seat bore the names of thousands who had sat there before. It was blank, empty, waiting. Most of the counselors ignored him. They spoke informal, using words the neural interface struggled to translate fast enough. They discussed trade agreements and military movements and things did not understand. When he tried to speak, they talked over him. When he made suggestions, they smiled politely and moved on. High Counselor was the worst. He never directly insulted, but he found 1,000 small ways to make him feel unwelcome. Scheduling meetings when was off-planet, forgetting to send him briefing documents, asking for his opinion on matters he could not possibly understand, then sighing when he hesitated. Only 2 counselors treated him with respect. One was Elder, the old scholar who had spoken in his defense. The other was Counselor Myra, a female who managed the Empire's medical systems. She saw value in different perspective, even if others did not. Give them time, told one evening in the palace gardens. Change frightens people. You are the living proof that our ways are not the only ways. That is a terrifying thought for those who have built their lives on tradition. I'm not trying to destroy their traditions, said tiredly. I just want to help. I know, and you will. But first, you need an opportunity to prove yourself. The opportunity came on a cold morning when the council was discussing routine matters, trade routes, border patrols, nothing urgent, nothing important. Then Counselor Myra received an urgent message on her communication device. Her face went pale. Your Majesty, she said, addressing King, who often attended council meetings. We have a situation on Colony 7. A plague has broken out. 3,000 infected in the first 2 days. Our doctors there say it is spreading fast. The council chamber went silent. Plagues were rare but when they appeared, they were devastating. Their medical technology was advanced, but their biology was complex. Sometimes diseases found paths that even their scanners could not predict. What is being done? King asked. The colony has been quarantined. Medical ships are on their way. But Your Majesty, the governor there is requesting emergency measures. He wants permission to evacuate all healthy citizens and leave the infected behind. Anger flashed in the king's eyes. Abandon our people? Absolutely not. With respect, Your Majesty, High Counselor said carefully, if this plague spreads beyond the colony, it could threaten the entire sector. Quarantine is harsh, but it may be necessary. We do not abandon our citizens, King said firmly, but could see the worry in his eyes. The king understood the danger, even if he hated the solution. Spoke up, surprising himself. May I see the medical data from the colony? Every head turned toward him. Counselor frowned. This is a matter, Dr. Park. I am a member of this council, said, keeping his voice steady. And I am a doctor. Let me see the data. Counselor Myra sent the files to his neural interface, closed his eyes and let the information flow through his mind. Patient symptoms, blood work, progression rates. He saw patterns in the data, connections that the doctors had missed because they were looking at it through eyes. This is similar to a virus that affected humans 50 years ago, said, opening his eyes. We called it red fever. The symptoms are different, but the progression pattern is the same. Similar does not mean identical, pointed out. Human diseases and diseases are completely different. Are they? Asked. He stood and accessed the shared display in the center of the council chamber. With his neural interface, he projected data into the air where everyone could see. Look at the protein structures. Look at how the disease attacks the immune system. Yes, biology is different from human biology, but viruses follow patterns. This pattern is familiar. He pulled up more data, comparing the plague to the human red fever. The similarities were striking once you knew what to look for. We cured red fever using a treatment that stimulated the body's natural immune response, explained. It did not attack the virus directly. Instead, it helped the immune system recognize and fight it. I think the same approach could work here. You think? His voice dripped with skepticism. You want to experiment on dying based on a human disease from 50 years ago. I want to try something instead of giving up, shot back, frustration breaking through his usual calm. Your traditional methods are not working. The disease is spreading. In 3 days, you will have 10,000 infected. In a week, 50,000. And your solution is to abandon them. The council erupted in arguments. Some agreed with, others thought he was insane. High Counselor stood and pointed at accusingly. This is exactly what I warned about. An outsider with no understanding of our biology, proposing dangerous experiments. Enough, King's voice cut through the noise. Dr. Park, how certain are you that this will work? Took a breath. This was the moment. If he was wrong, people would die and it would be his fault. But if he said nothing, people would die anyway. I am not certain at all, admitted. But I am certain that doing nothing is not an option. Give me a chance. Send me to the colony with a medical team. Let me try. If it does not work, you can fall back to quarantine, but if it does work—" He looked around the chamber. "If it does work, we save everyone." King studied him for a long moment. "You understand that if you fail, many will call for your removal from the council." "Yes, Your Majesty." "And you still want to go?" "Yes." The king nodded slowly. "Very well. Counselor Myra, assemble a medical team. Dr. Park will lead it. You have 3 days to show results. After that, we implement full quarantine." Felt relief and terror in equal measure. 3 days. He had 3 days to save a colony or doom his position forever. Within hours, was on a ship heading for Colony 7. Counselor Myra came with him, along with 5 doctors and, surprisingly, captain and a squad of guards. "The king ordered us to protect you," explained. "Some people on the colony might be desperate. Desperate people are dangerous." But also had human help. He had sent an urgent message through official channels, and the Human Federation responded immediately. Doctor, one of the best infectious disease specialists in human space, met them at the colony. Was short and energetic, with quick hands and a quicker mind. She took one look at the data and nodded. "I treated red fever during the outbreak. If this is similar, I know what to do." The colony was in chaos. Governor Tarn met them at the landing pad, and he looked like he had not slept in days. "Dr. Park, thank the ancestors you are here. We have 5,000 infected now. The hospitals are full. People are dying in their homes." "Show me your medical facilities," said. The colony hospital was overrun. Patients lay in hallways, waiting for treatment that was not coming. Doctors and nurses moved between them, exhausted and hopeless. The air smelled of sickness and fear. And got to work immediately. They analyzed blood samples from infected patients. They compared the disease to the old red fever data. They worked for 16 hours straight, testing and adjusting, until finally looked up with tired but triumphant eyes. "I think we have it," she said. The treatment was not complicated, but it required precise timing and dosing. They had to stimulate the immune system without overwhelming it. Too little and the disease would continue spreading. Too much, and the patient's body would attack itself. They tested it on 5 volunteer patients for 6 agonizing hours and monitored them constantly. The patients got worse before they got better and twice thought they had failed. But then, slowly, the symptoms began to reverse. Fever dropped. Breathing improved. By the 20th hour, all 5 patients were recovering. "It works," breathed. "It actually works." They scaled up production immediately. The treatment required ingredients they had on hand, but mixing it properly took time. Train the local doctors while organized the distribution. Captain and his guards helped maintain order as desperate families pushed forward, demanding treatment for their loved ones. For 3 days, no one slept more than a few hours. Moved from patient to patient, supervising treatments, adjusting doses, making sure everyone received proper care. The doctors watched him work, and their expressions slowly changed from skepticism to respect. On the morning of the 4th day, Governor Tarn found in the hospital cafeteria, was drinking something that tasted like coffee but was not quite right. "Dr. Park," Tarn said, "I wanted you to know. The infection rate has dropped by 60%. No new deaths in the last 12 hours. Your treatment is working." Felt tears sting his eyes. He was too tired to hide them. "How many did we lose?" 417, Tarn said quietly. "But you saved 6,000. Without you, they would all be dead." The news reached the High Council within the hour. King sent a personal message. "Well done, Dr. Park. Return when you are ready. The council awaits." But could not leave yet. He stayed another week, making sure every patient received treatment, training local doctors on the procedure, setting up protocols to handle future outbreaks. Stayed with him, and together they wrote a comprehensive medical manual combining human and approaches to infectious disease. When finally returned to the palace, he found things had changed. The staff in his quarters greeted him respectfully. Other counselors nodded to him in the hallways. Even High Counselor, though still cold, could not deny what had accomplished. At the next council meeting, King addressed the chamber. Dr. Park has proven his worth beyond any doubt. He saved Colony 7 through skill, knowledge, and courage. Does anyone wish to challenge his place on this council? Silence. Even shook his head. No, Your Majesty, Dr. Park has earned his seat. After the meeting, Princess Aura found in the gardens. She smiled at him, proud and grateful. You did it. You made them see. I just did my job, said. No, Aura replied. You changed everything. 1 year had passed since saved Princess Aura's life. 1 year since everything changed. The High Council chamber felt different now. Seat no longer looked so new. His name had been carved into the crystal beside it, marking him as a permanent member. When he spoke, the other counselors listened. Not all of them agreed with him, but they respected his voice. Even High Counselor had learned to work with him, though their relationship would never be warm. Today's meeting was special. Representatives from 6 other alien species sat in the observation gallery. They had come to hear about something unprecedented, something that could reshape the political landscape of the entire sector. King stood at the center of the council chamber. Counselors, honored guests, we are here to discuss a proposal that was impossible a year ago. Dr. Park, please present your plan. Stood, trying not to feel nervous. He had spent 6 months developing this idea with Princess Aura, Counselor Myra, and Doctor. Now it was time to make it real. I propose the creation of a medical exchange program, began. His voice echoed in the crystal chamber. This program would allow doctors and medical researchers from different species to study together, share knowledge, and develop treatments that work across biological boundaries. He activated the holographic display, showing images of the proposed facilities. We would build 3 main campuses, one here one on Earth, one on a neutral space station. Each campus would house research labs, hospitals, and training facilities. Students and doctors from any species could apply to study there. Elder spoke up, his old voice still strong. This is ambitious. How would you fund such a program? The Empire and the Human Federation have agreed to provide initial funding, explained. But we hope other species will join as partners. The goal is not to make profit, but to save lives across the galaxy. A counselor did not know well raised her hand. What would prevent species from stealing each other's medical secrets? Nothing, said honestly. That is the point. Medical knowledge should not be a secret. When someone is dying, it does not matter if the cure came from your species or another. What matters is saving the life. Murmurs ran through the chamber, some approving, some skeptical. I have a question, High Counselor said, braced himself, had been quiet about this proposal, which made nervous. You say any species can apply, but what about quality control? How do we ensure students meet proper standards? It was a fair question and had prepared for it. Each campus would be run by a joint board of directors. Admission would be competitive, based on skill and dedication, not species. We would establish universal standards that all students must meet. Universal standards, repeated thoughtfully, created by whom? By us, said. By the best medical minds from every participating species, including you, Counselor. Your expertise in medical ethics would be invaluable. Blinked, surprised. He had not expected to be invited into the project. After a moment, he nodded slowly. I would be honored to contribute. King smiled slightly. Was learning. The best way to turn an opponent into an ally was to give them a role in building the future. The discussion continued for 2 hours. Questions flew from every direction. Logistics, ethics, politics, costs. Answered what he could and admitted when he did not know. He had learned that honesty earned more respect than pretending to have all the answers. Finally, King called for a vote, all in favor of supporting the medical exchange program. 14 hands rose, only one counselor abstained. The vote passed. The representatives from other species rushed forward after the meeting ended. A tall, thin alien from the species shook his hand enthusiastically. My government will want to join this program. Our people suffer from a genetic disease that your combined knowledge might cure. A thick-skinned representative was more cautious. We would like to observe first, see if this actually works, but if it does, yes, we are interested. Even species that had been neutral or even hostile to humans showed interest. Medical care was universal. Every species got sick. Every species wanted cures. That evening stood in the palace gardens with Princess Ara. She looked different now. She wore simple medical robes instead of royal finery. Her hands bore small scars from working in laboratories. I still can't believe you're becoming a doctor, said. Ara laughed. Neither can most of the nobility. My brother calls it my phase, like I'll get bored and come back to court life. But I won't. You showed me that healing matters more than titles. Your father must be proud. He is, confused but proud. Ara looked up at the stars. He told me yesterday that saving my life was the beginning of something larger. He said you didn't just heal my body. You healed something in our empire that we didn't know was sick. What do you mean? We were dying, not physically, but culturally. We were so focused on preserving the past that we stopped building the future. We were becoming a museum instead of a civilization. You reminded us how to grow. Footsteps approached behind them. They turned to find King walking through the gardens, alone except for 2 distant guards. Your Majesty, both in our abode. Please, no formality tonight, said. He looked tired but content. I wanted to speak with you both before the announcement tomorrow. Announcement? Asked. I'm stepping down from the throne, said calmly. Ara gasped, Father, no. Not immediately, assured her. In 2 years, but I wanted you both to know first. Prince will take my place. He's ready, even if he doesn't think so yet. But why? Ara asked. Smiled, because I've accomplished what I set out to do. I've opened our empire to new ideas. I've shown our people that change is not death, it's life. Now it's time for the next generation to lead. He looked at, including you, Dr. Park. You're young. You'll be on the council for decades if you choose. You'll help shape policies I can't even imagine. I'm honored, Your Majesty. You should be honored, said, but also terrified. The future is not easy. There will be conflicts, species that resist cooperation, diseases we haven't discovered yet, political battles that make today's look simple. Are you prepared for that? Thought about the question. A year ago, he would have said no. A year ago, he was just a doctor on a small station trying to do his job. But now he understood something important. Being prepared was not the same as being ready. You could never be fully prepared for the future. You just had to face it with courage and good people beside you. I'll do my best, said. That's all anyone can ask, replied. The next morning, official announcements went out across the galaxy. The medical exchange program was real. Applications were now open. Funding had been secured. Construction would begin within months. The Human Federation held a massive celebration. President, who had been skeptical of the whole thing, gave a speech praising the new alliance. For 50 years, humanity has tried to prove we belong among the stars. Today, we did more than prove it. We became essential. Watched the speech from the palace on. Doctor sat beside him, reviewing applications from the first wave of candidates. 200 applications in the first hour, said, scrolling through the data. From 17 different species. This is going to be huge. If we can make it work, said. We will, assured him. Look at this one, a doctor who specialized in nerve regeneration. And this one, who developed new surgical techniques we've never seen. These people are brilliant. Imagine what they'll accomplish working together. Smiled, he was imagining it. 6 months later, the first campus opened on the neutral space station. It was smaller than planned, and half the equipment was still being installed, but it was real. 50 students from 12 species moved into their quarters. 15 faculty members from 8 species prepared their first lectures. Was there for opening ceremonies, along with Princess Aura, who would be studying in the first class. King attended, as did president and representatives from every participating government. "This is a historic day," President said in his speech. "Today we prove that what unites us is stronger than what divides us." But the real moment came later, in the hospital wing. A young student accidentally cut herself during a training exercise. The wound was not serious, but it was bleeding heavily. A student immediately helped apply pressure. A human student grabbed bandages. A student calculated the proper dose of coagulant for biology. They worked together without thinking about it, without hesitation, just doctors helping another doctor. Watched from the doorway and felt his eyes sting with tears. This was what he had hoped for, not the grand speeches or political alliances. This, students from different worlds working together because someone needed help. "You did it," a voice said beside him. Captain had become unofficial bodyguard and surprisingly his friend. "You actually did it." "We did it," corrected, all of us. The program grew quickly. Within a year, 2 more campuses opened. Within 2 years, the program had graduated its first class of doctors. They spread across the galaxy, carrying with them the knowledge that species boundaries meant nothing in medicine. Some of those doctors went to war zones, treating soldiers from both sides. Some went to poor colonies that had never seen advanced medical care. Some stayed at the campuses as teachers, training the next generation. They saved millions of lives. They cured diseases that had plagued species for centuries. They proved that cooperation was not just idealistic, it was practical. Remained on the High Council. Over the years, he pushed for more programs like the medical exchange, educational exchanges, cultural exchanges, trade agreements that benefited everyone, not just the powerful. He did not always win, but he won enough. Princess Aura graduated at the top of her class. She could have taken an easy position at the royal palace, but instead she chose to work at a clinic on a rough frontier world. She treated miners and farmers, people who would never see the inside of a palace. Her father visited her there once and returned with pride in his eyes. "She has found her purpose," King told, "just as you found yours." 10 years after that desperate surgery on a small medical station, stood before the High Council one more time. But today, he was not presenting a proposal. He was receiving an honor. "Dr. Park," King said, "for your service to the Empire and to the galaxy at large, we award you the Star of Unity. This honor has been given only 17 times in our 10,000-year history. It recognizes those who have changed the course of civilizations." The medal was beautiful, a crystal star that caught the light and threw rainbows across the chamber, but barely saw it. He was looking at the faces in the crowd. Princess Aura, now Dr. Aura, smiling with pride. Captain standing at attention. Elder, even older now but still sharp. Counselor Myra, Dr. High Counselor, who actually nodded with respect. And among them, visitors from dozens of species. All there because of a program that started with one desperate surgery and a king brave enough to honor a debt. "Thank you, Your Majesty," said simply. "But I did not do this alone. I could not have done it alone. That's the point of everything we've built. Alone, each species is limited. Together, we're unlimited." King smiled. "Well said, Counselor Park. Now shall we discuss your next impossible idea?" Laughed. There was always a next idea. Always another problem to solve, another boundary to cross, another impossibility to make real. That night, returned to his quarters and sat by the window. He looked out at the capital, the lights of a million homes spreading out below. Ships moved through the sky, heading to destinations across the galaxy. Some of those ships carried students going to study at the exchange campuses. Some carried doctors bringing new treatments to distant worlds. He thought about that small medical station where this had all begun. He thought about Princess Ara dying on his operating table. He thought about how one decision, one surgery, one act of compassion had led to all of this. Humans always said they wanted to matter in the galaxy. They wanted to prove they belonged among the ancient species, the powerful empires, the civilizations that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Realized humans had been thinking about it wrong. They didn't need to prove they were like the others. They needed to prove they were different, that their perspective, their methods, their way of seeing problems mattered. And they had, through medicine and cooperation, and refusing to accept that things had to stay the way they had always been, through being so stubborn and adaptable that they turned impossibilities into achievements. Smiled and turned away from the window. Tomorrow there would be another council meeting, another challenge, another chance to build something better. He was ready.